hear me. Mrs. Vaupel? Mrs. Butchko?
Here.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Tavy?
Really low today.
Mr. Fink?
Here.
Mrs. Marmion?
Here.
Mr. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Stotts?
Here. Okay, we ask you to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is in the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there is no executive session this evening. And is there a motion to go into the Committee of the Whole?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're now in the Committee of the Whole. We have a couple of items to discuss on the agenda. Here is the policy discussion for the use of facilities, and I'm going to dump that on Denise.
This is policy 7510, use of school facilities. And there's just a couple revisions which you will see highlighted on here. Trying to get my scroll to work. Bill and I discussed some of these last week. So for item number 2 here, we just wanted to remove the PTO and homeschool associations since we don't have those right now. For number 3, just wanted to clarify that number 3 includes youth sports organizations. Those groups are mentioned on the second page, and I just wanted to make sure that they're highlighted here because that's where they are meant to be. On page 2, just taking out the phrase where rules says specify on that number 1, that paragraph, just wanted to add PTA and OMASAC. So that there would be no cost for those organizations, their co-sponsored activities with the school. Down further there, Bill and I just had a question about this, so just want to ask Dr. McDowell or Mrs. Coleman if you can answer. Just if the youth sports teams are currently providing the statement of compliance with the prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries?
I haven't seen any recently.
Okay.
I know when this first came about years ago, we were getting a lot of them.
Mhm.
And I do know some of the sports, they do like, well, now we get the COVID statement. This is what we do for COVID. I haven't seen anything regarding concussion, but I can check with Mike Sinesi, who keeps all those forms, but I haven't seen any.
Okay.
If we'd gotten them, like what would be on the board for approval tonight, it would be attached.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So is that, I guess the question is that something we should require? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but we just wanted to bring it up. And then the second question is on the last page, if the regulations are distributed to every user of the facility. So again, just another.
That I don't think it happens.
Okay.
Only because it's all, I think we condense this policy into your actual form.
Right. Yeah.
That we don't attach another copy of the board policy.
Right. Okay.
I think we just refer to it. I don't think we attach it.
I have to pull up the form to recall
Yeah.
if
I don't think we do.
there's anything on there.
Yeah, if we're not doing that, that's fine, because somewhere in this regulation, it shows that they have to abide by regulation or a policy.
7510, yes, right in
Yeah.
the beginning.
So we could probably take that out entirely.
Yeah. Can you put your thing? Sorry.
I'm just curious about the D3. I just didn't understand what the difference was, leaving it in or out. Where rules do specify?
Oh, I'm going to let Bill answer that.
Wait a minute, where are you, B3?
Here. Here.
Community organization?
Page 2, second paragraph.
You're do,
Oh. Well, it's a given that the, yeah, certain items of equipment, and we specify equipment, the kitchen equipment, they have to do it, so it specifies it everywhere. Okay,
Can I just say that I think that looking at the form that we have, there are 15 general guidelines that, so I think you can delete that wording in the policy of distributing the regulations, because it's, if
It's
anyone
all
would
there.
agree, it's
Yeah.
inherent in the form.
yeah. All right, so I'll take that out. All right. So if you guys are okay with this, I can have Anita make these changes, and then in October, it'll be presented, and that'll be your first read. And then November, your second read, and then this will become your new policy and be placed on your website.
okay,
Everybody good?
yep,
Yep.
yep. Okay, thanks Denise. Two more things. One, Fred has requested that we have our committee meetings in virtual mode rather than in person. So we can discuss that. Personally, I like them in person. We send 3 to 5-year-old kids to school 5 days a week. We should certainly be willing to come here twice a month in person. So if it's okay for the kids, I would think it's okay for us, but, some- I'm sorry, say again?
I think it's better use of time to do it virtually. Come for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's more efficient.
Okay,
I agree just in the fact that, and I'm fine with coming here, that's not a problem, but when it's literally 5 minutes, like that, it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of not the best use of time. If they were actual committee meetings like we had before we broke it up into 5 separate committees, and they were like, there was actually meat to the meetings, but when we come in and just say, oh yeah, that's fine on one given thing, it's kind of a waste of time for me, when we could just do it on the phone.
I agree.
To that point, would there be, because I know sometimes our finance committee meetings can have a little more meat to them, run a little lengthier, would we want to consider perhaps some committees decide to opt virtual, where another committee would prefer to meet in person, or do we want to be consistent across the board?
That wouldn't be really fair to them who have to come for all the meetings.
Oh, true, that's
And
right.
it's, with all the school stuff and all the other responsibilities that everybody has, it's not about not coming in person. It's not about not coming in person and being afraid of this, that, and the other thing. It's better use of time, because some committees may go longer. There may be some months where, yeah, finance goes longer, but there's also gonna be months where finance doesn't go as long, or personnel doesn't go as long, where they go longer, and it's just better use of time, in my opinion.
So maybe if I could just kind of share, so the original premise was not just about exposure, it's also about flexibility and access. So for example, in the school district, administrative meetings that brings together the whole team, in lieu of us having 25 administrators leave their spaces, including the administrative team from here, to come for an hour, hour and 15. It's much easier to keep folks in place, and that way, when emergencies come up, when there's a need for levels of flexibility, we have not displaced individuals, and we've also been able to be more efficient in the usage of time, and also not congregating in a large space. I referenced it based on some of the initial feedback, in addition to referencing the fact that we are in the midst of a surge, and then just trying to be very conscious of the working schedules, and we didn't want the moment and the challenges with scheduling to be a core issue for our board members who are all committed volunteers, but still very much volunteers. The Collingswood board made the decision based on those merits to have their committee meetings virtual. Not because there was a level of fear, but they were just trying to be as flexible as possible given the fact that sometimes there's going to be inclement weather and those, so trying to kind of remove some of the structural barriers that would prevent authentic meetings from taking place, and then the fluidity of if meetings run over or if meetings are very short, just to trying to be accommodating, and I just kind of wanted to put that back out there. We have not had an issue in Oakland school so far this year. But we have had on multiple campuses in Collingswood, we have had COVID positive cases, none of which originating from inside the school, but we have had multiple confirmed cases that have caused quarantines and isolations in now 6 different campuses. So we just wanted to kind of, just to revisit, put it out there.
Well, there is still a pandemic, but, we've done in-person meetings for years and years, and this has never been a problem. They don't start until 5:30 at the earliest. So the workday is done. Anybody that's in the school is, theoretically, the workday in the school is done. They might go home and do something, or they might stay and do something in the school, but I don't think it's a burden. And we're only coming to Oaklyn, so even if you're in the far stretches of Collingswood, you might be 2 miles away, and the traffic usually isn't real bad.
But there are people who work outside of Collingswood and Oakland who sometimes may not always be able to get here on time or get back, or are rushing to get back. And if they can jump on and not be worrying about it one way or the other where they are. The other thing is this year with the change in the committees, I understand that for the last few years we've had the committees, but they were a half an hour. You got both the personnel and the curriculum at the same time, and it was, you knew that there was going to be a longer period of time. The last 2 times, because they're broken into 15-minute times now, I've had to rush here. I was here for 5 minutes, and then I could leave, and it was actually more inconvenient.
Okay, so it's a matter of convenience, not a matter of fear.
I said that at the beginning. It was not about being a fear. I think I said the congregating is something to consider, especially considering a lot of businesses, schools, state offices are not meeting in person because of the congregation. But for me, that's not it. I think that it is more efficient. It provides more flexibility for everybody involved, not just one or the other. And it's not a public meeting, so it's not about keeping out from the public. We can all see this up, probably see it even easier on the computer, because if anything needs to be shared, it can be shared on our own space. That's my opinion.
And I'll just add as a, oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
as a committee chair, I mean, I want every voice heard at every opportunity. And there is still a pandemic. There's a very good chance that I, as a committee chair, could have an exposure and would not want to be, I've got 3 kids in the school system and I'm back to working full time. My chances compared to the summer of having to quarantine are much greater. So I would support anything that would help us work better, because I'm all for the work that we do in those committee meetings, because they're really important. And if it means, the reason we restructured them was so that everybody could be participating, right? And
Yes.
if there's still a pandemic that could be a hindrance to participation, I'd rather do something that would take those barriers down.
I'm not sure how the new structure is making it so just means that everybody's on a committee.
I'm sorry, say that again, Colleen?
I'm not sure how the new structure is having everybody participate, or did you mean everybody is on a committee? That's what I was asking.
That's what I meant.
Okay, that's what I meant. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
If I could just add on one more.
Sure.
So for the 2 committee meetings that we came to, the first one, we had to go into the naughty room over there and wait while everybody finished up. And then we were able to come out. And then the last one, I guess the committee before I showed up was already finished. We sat there and we joked around for like 10 minutes, and then we had the one question, and it was literally like 20 seconds. And then that was it, time to go. Where with the previous meetings being on Zoom, and not the board meeting itself, just the committee meetings, Beth Ann can orchestrate that by putting people in waiting rooms. It's not a big hassle for people, and then it's not going to, also, you're not going to walk in the door while maybe a quorum's gonna be broken right then because you heard something that you shouldn't have heard. It's just a better structure in general, I think. And then finally, what's your push for being in person so much as opposed to, what's the negative part of, doing the Zoom for committee meetings?
Well, and my personal feeling is that I function better in person. You know, I want to sit here and watch you, look you in the eye, hear what you're saying, and I have an opportunity to answer more questions. On Zoom, I just don't have the same feeling. You know,
That's very valid.
I feel detached,
That's really valid. I think a lot of people feel that way.
and so that's my reason. And we've done it this way for 50 years, at least 50 years. I'm not sure how back before my time. Well, we've done it for your entire lifetime. And I don't know, yes, we had a pandemic. Last year, we had to do some things differently. That was required. We've made some changes this year. The kids are back in school. You know, we wear masks. So you know, my feeling is I'd rather go back into person. I personally function much better in person than I do on a computer screen.
I can appreciate Bill's point. I'm not 50, you know, still in my 30s. But
Guys are making me
you know,
feel
obviously,
bad.
whatever the consensus of the board is, I'll go with. But I can appreciate Bill's point because I kind of feel the same way. There's something about that, I think, face-to-face human interaction that can never be duplicated or replicated when it's virtual. And I think there is something to, you know, physically being there with your fellow board members, with your fellow committee members, to have the back and forth, the open dialogue, things kind of going much smoothly. So I kind of feel like I operate at a better, you know, better level there too. And I can appreciate the fact that, you know, the point that there is certainly a convenience factor to it. So I do kind of share Bill's sentiments, but at the same time, you know, whatever the consensus is, you know, I'll certainly go along with.
I feel the same way. There's part of me that just likes getting out of the house. But I also think there are obviously benefits to Zoom. I wonder if, because I know down further on the agenda, the board committee, policy is on there, and I have some questions about that. So I'm wondering if it's a bigger question too, is if separating curriculum and personnel is the best use of everyone's time too, since both of their agendas seem to be small, and maybe it could shift, I don't know, facilities or finance or something like that. I just want to throw that question out there, have that conversation. It doesn't have to be tonight, but maybe we could look at that, other breakup of the committees. Because as I look at this policy, it has finance, negotiations, and personnel all put together. So just wanted to have that question too.
I agree with Denise in that if we were changing things back to the way they were in order to be in person, I'd be supportive of that.
You'd be in favor of changing it back and being in person? Okay. All right, well, tell you what, let's have a straw poll here. Who wants the virtual? Starting next month. Yeah, you have to vote one way or the other.
As it stands or restructuring the committee?
No, as it stands right now.
As it stands.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and how many want in person? 4.
No, I got
Somebody-
5.
somebody call
Say again.
Chris.
Yeah, 4-4?
4.
Was it 4-4?
Yeah.
All right. I'm missing one.
All right, to resolve this, next month we'll do it virtually. We'll see how that works. So, and we'll go from there, but come November, we'll consider this again. Okay, everybody in agreement? Reluctantly? Okay. Moving right along is, at this point, another item that I'd like to talk, I don't know whether, I think here's the best place to do it rather than in the policy section. But we have 26 policies this month to consider. That's way too many. You know, that's like reading War and Peace in a month. We've got to limit this. We just can't have that many policies. These are not one-page policies for the most part. And then we have the regulations to go with it, so that's another, in this case, 9 more. We have to limit them. So I would propose setting some kind of limit, 10 a month or something like that, if we have to do it, to make it a little more manageable.
Are we allowed to do that?
Sure, why not?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no. We have these policies now. If there's a new mandatory policy, that'll be one of the 10. But otherwise, to revise them, we can revise them as we get to them. Because these are not all the changes that are gonna have to be made at some point on the policies that we have. These are the ones we started with, there'll be more. So make it a little more manageable. Maybe some of the board members then will actually read this stuff and see what's in it. So it'll work out better, I think.
I support all of that. My,
Okay, that's everything I had. Anybody else?
I have something on a policy, and I'm not sure if we should discuss that now or down when we get to policy.
It's one of the ones you've got in here tonight, right?
Yep.
Let's do it then.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything? Okay, is there a motion to come out of committee of the whole?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're now back in public. We have presentations. We have Dr. McDowell.
Okay, so good evening to everyone that is here present and all of those who are watching us via live feed. In terms of the start of the school year, so there's no official presentation, just a quick update. Relating to the start of school, I can say with confidence that students are back, learning is taking place, classrooms are very active. All of the safety protocols that were outlined in the reopening plan are being rigidly adhered to. Some of the bright notes that we have is that there is new furniture in the cafeteria. Students are enjoying that new space. Teachers are really taking to heart the opportunity to get to know students, rebuild and reestablish those relationships. There is a large a grouping of activities that are really meant to both formally and informally assess where children are, what they need, but done in a fun and engaging way. And that energy is pretty pervasive across the entire school. So for families, please rest assured that our amazing staff here in this facility are going above and beyond in order to acclimate or reacclimate children to the space. They're taking under advisement that some of our children haven't been here. They were in a remote space. Some of our children had reservations about coming back, but we are taking the entire first trimester in order to transition children while assessing their needs. And then we will be moving at a more aggressive pace for the second trimester once we've collected all of the data and once we have put the learning acceleration plans in place, not just here, but at all schools. And that's the end of my update. I'm sorry. We will be releasing very shortly a comprehensive plan for COVID testing. The purpose for COVID testing is to keep schools open. That's the intent. So at a very high level, what this will include is that there will be a random sampling of students that will be tested within each school campus. All of this is pending parental consent. It'll be done in a pooled testing. And what will happen is we will then use this data in order to identify where there is or is not prevalence of virus with an effort of maintaining our cohorts in order to keep as many children in school as possible in order to keep school open as long as possible. But details will be following. We're currently in the process. A vendor has been selected. Contracts have been signed. Currently, there are districts all over our state who are currently scrambling for a vendor. We were early adopters. We saw that this was coming down the pipeline, and based on the feedback from the board, based on feedback from the leadership teams, we made the decision to go into active agreement with a vendor early. So we have locked in that level of service. It will also be used in order to support the executive order that came from the governor regarding all educational personnel who work in an educational facility to either be fully vaccinated or be subject to weekly testing. The testing will take place here on this campus so that we have no loss of learning, no lack of continuity of instruction, and then we can get back to the business of teaching and learning for. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Any questions for Dr. McNeil?
I have a question. I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit about what the strategy or teaching for students that have to stay home for quarantining or isolating, and what they are being provided right now. I know there was some staffing issues, so I just wanted to check on that.
So last month we had received approval to go into agreement with a service provider to provide instructional support staff for students who are excluded from school specifically related to COVID. We have been challenged with finding staff to be able to fill those roles. So we're currently exploring a couple of different options, including retired staff, including contracted staff from yet another vendor. The vendor that we went into agreement with has not been able to supply appropriate staff. So we have gone to both of our bargaining units, both the OEA as well as the CEA, and we're looking at a flexible usage of time, which might include time in the afternoon in order to leverage some of our staff in-house that would be able to provide that service. What we're really looking to provide students ultimately is anywhere from 3 to 4 hours per day, each day that they have to be quarantined due to the exclusion criteria. So we'll continue to whittle away at that. We have a few more leads that we're currently pursuing, but it has been a significant challenge to find individuals willing to do that work.
I got a question on the random testing. Is this is this coming from the state of New Jersey to do this? Is this our initiative?
So per the guidance from the New Jersey Department of Health, it is advised that in periods of high viral prevalence, so we're currently as a region in moderate status, but as a county we are in red or high status. So based on the status that we're operating under, which would be moderate, the recommendation is 10% sample of your student population. For students participating in extracurricular activities such as athletics or high-touch activities, face-to-face, indoor activities, they're saying that a larger sample of students is warranted. For outdoor activities, 10%.
Okay.
So currently there is no executive order for testing of students. There's just a recommendation from the Department of Health based on
Okay, so
the
the Department
transmission
of Health
rates.
is recommending 10% of the students.
Currently, based on our current
Okay.
status, yes.
Okay.
One thing, you had mentioned cohorts in general. So if there is a minor outbreak, is it going to be classroom closures, or is it going to be more of a school closure?
So it's really situational. So in general, what happens is that if you have an environment where, say you have one child who is either COVID positive or has been exposed to someone who is COVID positive, students within proximity of that particular child within their cohort would need to quarantine. It would not be the whole class in an environment where they have been fully masked the entire time. If they have been in an environment where they are unmasked, then it would be the whole class, but it would not be the whole school. So it really would be situational. All of the contact tracing and the recommendations are at the guidance of the Department of Health and at the discretion, and the final decision is actually coming from Nurse Hopkins. So she would be doing that in concert with the Department of Health and then she would be working collaboratively with Principal Bolton in order to make that notice.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? Would lunch be an example of when, because the kids are unmasked during that time, that would be more, I guess, dangerous or more likely to be quarantined?
I wouldn't use dangerous. I would say that children are at greater risk of exposure during lunch, but it would be the students within 6 feet of the specific child. The remainder of the students would not be in the proximity of concern.
So I just had a couple questions for clarification. One as it pertains to student testing, and one as it pertains to staff that will be tested. So students who are randomly tested at 10%, they will need parental consent to be tested, correct? If that parental consent is not granted, what is the consequence at that point for the student if the parent refuses for the on-site testing?
So we're still looking at, we don't want this to be punitive. So we would strongly encourage the families to participate in this. But ultimately, if a parent does not want their child to be tested, we would encourage them to work that out with their healthcare provider. But we're still working through the logistics. So we're looking at this not being punitive. We will be enlisting our communication support in order to make sure that we're striking the right balance. We don't want to fearmonger this. The sole purpose of testing is not to increase anxiety. It's to keep schools open. And the more information that we know, the better that we can be, and the more meticulous we can be with making sure that our cohorts are doing what they need to do so that we don't have to shut down classrooms and we don't have to shut down schools. In the event of a outbreak that is school related, and generally that is 4 or more cases that originated from within the school, the Department of Health would shut down the school, not the district. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid those decisions being taken out of our hands by being proactive in this approach. And that's one of the reasons why the governor and his administration allotted an additional $267 million to school districts to support testing, because the overarching goal is to keep schools open.
Yeah, the reason I asked, I know there was some chatter out there, so I always want to make sure we actually get the facts that if, parents had not given permission for their students to be tested, then the parents would be forced kind of on their own to get the child tested, and that child cannot be brought back into school until a negative test was produced. I don't know if that's just hearsay at this point, so I wanted
That
to
is
get the facts.
misinformation on social media.
That's what I assume.
There has been no discussion about excluding children based on a proactive strategy.
Right. So we can set the record straight there. So great. And just a second question in terms for staff testing, just to clarify. So the staff members who are unvaccinated that will be tested, that testing will be provided to them on site, or are they responsible on their own to obtain the test and present the result?
So our plan is to have testing made available on site. What we don't want is we don't want testing to be disruptive to the teaching and learning. We know that for a whole host of reasons there are going to be staff members who are not fully vaccinated. This is not a judgment call. We're complying with the executive order, and we want to make it as painless and as convenient as possible so that our educators can get back into the classroom.
Okay, I have a question on the virtual services that we provide to the student that's quarantined. Is it safe to assume that if someone tested positive tomorrow, they would not receive services virtually?
That's correct.
So at the moment, this is the plan. At the moment, we don't have the staff to do it. So for the immediate future, they're not going to receive services.
So they would not receive direct services. So what was agreed upon at the beginning, at the start of the school year, across the board between both school districts was for all instructional staff to maintain their Google Classrooms. weekly. So all of the content, the information will be maintained in that vein or that space. These particular positions would be providing targeted instructional support, homework assistance, and serve as the liaison between the actual home teacher and the students during a time where they would be excluded from school. So in those particular cases, it really is situational. So in an elementary classroom, if it's an isolated incident and it's one student, that student would be working with the teacher. There would not be live instruction. It would be no different than if the child was just at home sick and needed some targeted support from the teacher. If it's an entire class, that entire class would switch to virtual during that quarantine period, and they would receive instruction virtually from the teacher.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you can answer this question, but what's the tipping point for an entire class? I mean, I'm sure it has to be situational, but is it a percentage or?
It comes from the Department of Health during the contact tracing period. So what they do is they analyze risk, levels of exposure, masked or unmasked, and proximity. And then they make a determination that is in concert with the information provided by the school nurse. And then they give us either the edict or the strong recommendation about how to move forward.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Doc. Next, paragraph 5, the future dates. We have the virtual back-to-school night on September 22nd, which is tomorrow. Okay. The PTA meeting on October 5th, the board meeting in October on the 19th, and the always popular picture day on the 21st of October. Okay, next we have the approval of the minutes of the August meeting. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, moved and seconded. Are there any questions or corrections? Yeah, okay, I have one. The approval for the old guys basketball was granted for the fall.
I believe it's Brittle
I'm
Brotherhood.
allowed to say that.
Yes, I think they call themselves Brittle Brotherhood.
Whatever. The minutes at this point show that it was granted for the entire year. In fact, it was only granted for the fall. They have to reapply for the next time. So we want to correct it to show that the approval was only for the fall session. That's all I had. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor of the corrected minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, there is no unfinished business, so we come to the first public comment section. If you have anything to bring to the board only on agenda items, please stand, give us your name and address, and try and keep your comments to 5 minutes. There will be another session a little bit later in the meeting where you can discuss anything your little heart desires. So at this point, is there anything to bring to the board on agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right along to the superintendent's report. You know, a lot of talking tonight.
So the September enrollment report will be presented at the October meeting based on the time frame. There is no safety, suspension, or anti-bullying report, and the child study team report will also be presented at the October meeting. And in 8.06 are the first reading of policy 110, so identification revised, student representative to the board 143.2, policy 155 board committees revised, and then 1648.13, which is mandated about school employee vaccination requirements, and that is new. And they are attached.
Thank you, sir. Liaison reports, the PTA, Denise.
Can we talk about policies first?
Uh,
Or, I know this is just the first reading, but Can we
Yeah, go
talk
ahead,
about
you can
them?
talk about policy first. Oh, the ones that are right here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
These four. So just want to discuss 143.2.
Yep.
Because my feeling is that we do not need this policy anymore because Oakland's board is not selecting the student representative to the council. This used to be a policy when Oakland went to ninth grade and we had a student representative to the Oakland board. That, we don't have that anymore, obviously. So it was, I guess, revised so that it could look like they're selecting the representative for Collinswood board, but Collinswood is actually the board that selects it. So I'm just thinking that we don't need it anymore, but up for discussion.
I'm glad you brought that up, Denise, just because I was actually wondering about that. Are we having a student representative? Like, when I first looked at the policy, I didn't know if it meant like we would choose a senior from Collingswood, who's an Oakland student, to be the student representative for our board, or, as you've kind of said, is it kind of how it used to be? So I wasn't sure exactly how we were applying that policy either. Are we having a student representative, or is this strictly something that refers to the student representatives on the Collingswood board?
We're not having a student rep, is my understanding. These came up, I guess, over the summer. Denise was going through policies. And she said, do we, now that it started with, we're not a K-9 anymore.
Right, we said the
Kind of
freshman, yeah.
lost some news, like other things. So what happens is the high school principal selects a child, and I guess he has a whole selection process probably with his staff, but there's 3 reps to the Collingswood board, and one from Oakland, one from Woodland,
Right.
and then one from Collingswood. So that's,
I mean, I would agree then, Denise, if we're not going to have a student, like a Collingswood senior from Oakland serve as a student rep here, then I think it kind of makes that particular policy irrelevant for us.
Yeah. I think it would be different if Oakland was selecting the rep, but it's a Collinswood rep, so.
That's an interesting thought there, Todd. Do you think there's any chance that a senior at Collingswood would want to come to our board meeting as a representative? Yeah. We can't force the guy to do it or the girl to do it, but I'm thinking it's probably a problem because I'm imagining that they would not be terribly excited about being appointed to our board. So in that case, I agree. I think we can do away with it. Anybody else?
Yes, I just had a comment in regards to 1648.13 with the vaccination requirements. So first, kind of based on some of the things we've discussed already, Dr. McDowell, I do appreciate kind of your flexibility and how it's going to be handled to be the least disruptive to the learning environment for the sake of the students and teachers. One other consideration that I would ask, maybe we look at as the board, there is a little flexibility in the policy. As it says, nothing should prevent a Board of Education from revising the policy to include additional or stricter requirements. So one of the things, whether it's in committee or when we have an opportunity to look before this policy is officially adopted, there's been discussion with those staff who are unvaccinated, who may have already had COVID and required and have natural immunity. Should a staff member who, though is unvaccinated, who has recovered from COVID, thus has the natural immunity, should they still be subject to testing? I think it's at least worth a discussion.
So let me add clarity
Sure.
to that. There is not natural immunity. What happens is if they have had COVID within 90 days, there is still the prevalence of the virus in their system, and it would give it would still be positive within that 90 days. So it would give a false read because there's still prevalence in the system. So the recommendation is that an individual who is unvaccinated, who has had a confirmed case of COVID, would be pulled out of that and therefore should be removed from that practice.
The practice
of the weekly testing.
of the week would be removed.
Right. So because they're going to test positive every time within that 90-day window. So we're just trying to work through that right now. in order to craft the language.
Okay.
So there's a lot of logistics. That point was raised by OEA and CEA leadership.
So, I mean, is that, so just to clarify, I mean, is there, would there still be, so this idea though, that you do have the, kind of the antibodies, there's T-cell tests that you can do, would that still be considered, that rationale, if you will, in exempting staff from being tested?
We're still working
Still,
through those
okay,
details. Yeah.
fair enough, yep.
Do you want to abolish the policy? Or should I answer that?
With a vote, yeah. Do that now?
Might as well.
Okay, is there a motion at this point in time to abolish, policy number, 143.2, the student representative?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, done. Okay,
Aye.
Denise, you're not gonna get out of it this easy. It's back to
No,
you.
I know, but I'm not done with policy yet.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was just wondering if we could talk a little bit about the board committee policy.
Sure.
Just a couple small things. The first thing, this is totally me and looking at lists, but I just wonder if the list of committees on the first page can just be in the same order that they're listed throughout the policy. So for example, facilities is the first one, and then the second one is policy and legislative, but that's like far down on this list. Realize this is a minor, very minor thing, but it drives me nuts when there's a list and it doesn't reflect the text.
Okay.
Like an index, exactly. But I also wonder too, if, looking at this, it has finance, negotiations, and personnel all together, and I think that they should probably just be separated, particularly negotiations, because I know that that has to be a separate policy because of some people conflicts, so it would not fall under finance committee. I'm sorry? No, yeah, agreed, but everything else is separate. I don't know why they're just together. And I know that obviously these are not, we don't have enough members to serve on all these committees, so these are just examples of committees.
Oh, you know, I missed that.
Right, that's, yeah, and that's more what I'm thinking of. And then down on the liaison section, just had a correction, it's Oakland Education Foundation, not educational, so that should be corrected here, and then also at the end of the policy. And then, listed at the end of the policy are, I guess, like job descriptions for all those liaisons, but PTA is not included, so if, job description for the student liaison, which I imagine is not very different from the OEF job description. And then, just one other, thing, is down here on the first page, actually, I'm sorry, right above this for the liaison, president changed the word shall to may appoint. It's usually volunteer for those positions rather than the president, appointing someone to serve. And then I wonder if on the same page, that last, paragraph there, where it says, that the president shall serve as an ex officio member on all board committees, if that maybe could be changed to may, and I'm just thinking in the future, if maybe a president is not as committed as Phyllis to serving all
Oh,
the committees,
hey.
to not have to tie the president of the board to be on all, and I don't know, that's just a question we can obviously discuss.
About that one. And it may not be for today, it just may be something, but we were talking about the restructuring and things like that, and part of it was because we had an extra person with Bill being as president, just as an example, on both committees, but based off of this, then he would be an ex officio member for all committees and it wouldn't mess up the quorum. Isn't that correct? I could be missing it up.
I don't know the answer to that.
Because if the president's allowed to be an ex officio member of both committees, There's no reason to separate the two committees into 4 committees because you could attend both meetings without it being a problem. And that was the issue, was that somebody would be left out if we did that.
Okay, can we check on that this month? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, I'll tell you what, if we move to approve as a first reading, the 3 items that are still on here, we can make the changes during the month, and next month when we come back for the second reading, we can amend it with this, before the second reading will be the amended form. Okay,
I did my best, Denise, I'm sorry, I did my best to incorporate all of your notes. I know I didn't get them all. So can you scan it and send it to me so I can give it to Anita, so her, yeah, thank you.
I said, who's actually making all these changes?
yeah,
Well, not me, it'd be Anita and myself, but I know if she's gonna look at my handwriting and go, yeah, no. So, yeah, thank you.
okay, is there a motion to approve the 3? Did we do that already?
I don't think you need, it's just a reading. I don't think it's, right.
Okay, but it says move on a recommendation of the superintendent to approve the following presented. I'm okay either way.
Right.
Yeah, I'd rather do it with the motion. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
And
Second. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. On a roll call.
Mrs. Vopel? Yes. Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Marmion?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer? Yes. Mr. Stotts?
Yes. Okay, this way we have a first reading, so next month we can have the second reading and put them in force. We don't have to lose a month out of that. Okay, Denise.
PTA. So the PTA has not met yet, but will be meeting on Tuesday, October 5th. They did host an ice cream social last Friday out by the snack stand and the playground, which was very successful. And they also hosted welcome back breakfast for new families on the first day of school. And they are accepting members at this time. You do not need to be a parent. You can be a community member. So please join the PTA. And that is all I have. Oh, and the PTA calendars are back this year and look wonderful. It's nice to have a printed calendar back again.
Great. Okay, any questions on any of that? Okay, thanks, Denise. Omasac, Therese.
Hi, so MASAC has not met since our last meeting, but their next meeting is Monday, September 27th, and it'll be a virtual meeting on Zoom. They've received funding for the 2021-2022 year. Gym nights will begin in October, and they say thank you to the board for approving. As we've discussed, the over 30 basketball is happening. It's on Tuesdays. And just noting that OMASAC and not the school or the board require vaccination proof. So that's been a question out there. And they're also planning for Red Ribbon Week, which will happen in October. And that's it.
Okay. Wait just a second here. The testing, did you say that's required by OMASAC?
Not testing, proof of vaccination.
Okay. And they're gonna check that themselves, right? Correct. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks, Therese. Collingswood, I have good news for you guys. Collingswood hasn't met since our last meeting, so there's nothing to report. And we'll go to the educational, is that,
There's no all. Yeah, I've asked a couple of
It's
times to have
education,
the
okay.
educational taken off it's just education on the agenda, but it is, yes, Denise is correct. So the OEF board has not met in a while, but they are meeting on Monday, the 28th at 7:30. And they are waiting for the candy brochures for the winter sale fundraiser. And that's it.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Therese. Okay, section 10, the Business Administrator Board Secretary's report. Beth Ann.
Okay, so tonight we have your August monthly transfers, your August Secretary Treasurer's report, cash reports, financials, as well as a listing of your September 2021 purchase orders and September 2021 warrants to be paid. That's it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Section 11, Finance, Facilities, and Shared Services. Therese.
So 11.01 is the approval of transfers as presented by Ms. Coleman. 11.02 is the board secretary certifications of no over expenditures. 11.03, board certifications of no over expenditures. 11.04 is approval of the secretary and treasurer's reports that were just presented by Ms. Coleman. 11.05 are the purchase orders for the month of September. 11.06 are the warrant approvals. 11.07 is to approve a modification of our original contract with ESS. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is for the remote substitute teachers that we just discussed for full day and half day rates that are attached here. 11.08 is the Oakland budget season calendar attached here. 11.09 is a request to use facilities by PTA-sponsored events for the year, as we discussed at our August meeting. 11.10 is use of facilities for approval of the travel basketball practice and games for the November 1st to February 1st season. And that is on, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights, excluding Fridays where OMASAC is using the gym for their gym nights. So they've gone through all of those details. And that's it. So we're looking for approval on 11.01 through 11.10. 11.10.
Okay, thanks, Therese. Is there a motion to approve them? Please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second? Get the second? Okay. On a roll call, please.
Can I ask a question first? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, question?
On 11.07, I'm just curious for the remote teachers, what is the difference between a full day and a half day?
Oh, you're asking me? I'm looking at you. 4 hours or 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we weren't sure if we were going to do just the remote from 9 to 1, or it would be the same as their full instructional day. So I had them approve both rates because we honestly don't know who or what we're going to get. So I was covering all bases.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions? Okay, on a roll call, please.
Mrs. Vaupel?
Yes.
Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Marmion?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes. Okay, section 12, curriculum. Denise, you're back on again.
12.01, there are no field trips at this time. 12.02 is to approve senior privilege, which falls under policy 5111, for a student to complete 12th grade at Collingswood during the next school year. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is there a motion to approve item 12.02?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any questions on it? On a roll call.
Mrs. Vaupel?
Yes.
Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Marmion?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes. Okay, section 13, personnel, Rich.
Yes, looking for approval for item 13.01, which is approval of the recommendation of the superintendent to approve social work interns for the upcoming school year, and accompanying stipend. And then 13.02, which is approval of our preschool long-term floater substitute.
Okay, is there a motion to approve 1301 and 1302?
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions on either of those items? On a roll call.
Mrs. Valpel?
Yes.
Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Marmion?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes. Okay, section 14, policy and miscellaneous. Dr. McDowell.
Seeking approval for items 14.01 through .02. .01 is a second read. Second read on policies presented last board meeting. And .02 are regulations that require a first read. For 3142R, non-renewal of non-tenured teaching staff. 3221R, evaluation of teachers. 3222, evaluation of teaching staff, excluding teachers and administrators. 3223, evaluation of administrators, excluding principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. 3224, evaluation of principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. 4146, non-renewal of non-tenured support staff. 6471, school district travel. 7432, eye protection. And 8420, fire and fire drills.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there a motion to approve the policies and regulations as listed?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Are there any questions on any of these items? No.
You go first.
I was just gonna make a comment, if we are, gonna try to limit the number of policies that we're reviewing, also if they're revised, if there could be indicators where the revisions are, on the policies, would just, obviously, we're reading every word, but it would just be helpful for comparison, if that's possible.
Typically, they're underlined.
Yeah, some of them, they weren't, so,
Okay.
yeah, so I just wasn't sure how
Okay.
to reference back to make sure I was looking at the right thing.
Okay, that might be a little hard. Again, we
Okay.
get it from our, the service that updates all of our policies
okay.
automatically whenever there's a change in statute, or if a statute expires or whatever, then they change the policy, or if there's like a new law. So sometimes they underline or they strike through and then they add the new language.
Usually it's
Yeah.
the first reading that you can see the changes.
Right.
And then it seems that by the second reading, that
Right.
they're incorporated already.
Right.
Then that's my
Maybe
mistake.
that's it.
So,
Yeah, they used to be italicized.
yeah, they do try to mark it somehow. And I do apologize for the long list, but this wasn't a crazy amount of policies that we got, I guess in May or June. It was literally it was a lot of policies. It was, not that we were holding on to them so much, it's just so many came in from the state. So hopefully going forward, it won't be as sizable. I think as we get going in the school year, it won't be as bad. But we held them because we're not here in the summer. So they
Yeah.
kind of got held for a couple months, so then,
Yeah, they tend to come in like bananas anyway.
yeah, I would envision by November, December, there, maybe if you see two, you'll see a lot, but we held on to them all summer,
Yeah.
so. Okay.
Okay.
Roll call.
I have
where
a
are we?
question.
On a roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I still have a question.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Sorry, go back up. So I have a question about, the appendices for the road board. So this is 1648.11. And I guess my question is, I'm sorry, I guess my question is, in the plan that Dr. McDowell presented in August, there's a lot of information in there about the school's protocols. And I'm curious why that information isn't included here. And the one that I was looking at in particular, I want to scroll down, is the meals. So I know some of these are just based on recommendations, but there was Appendix F, the provision of meals, and it said the school district may include the locally developed protocols to implement layer prevention strategies. But in the plan that's presented in August, there's a whole list of things that the school will do, which I think is terrific. And I'm just wondering what the rationale is for not including all that information, which is all beautifully prepared over here.
Again, this is a state policy that, because you guys are state representatives, that you have to basically adopt to be in accordance with state law. But what the plan that Dr. McDowell presented to you is more school-specific.
Okay.
So basically, the 1648-11 is like more the generic, you have to have a school plan for food and everything.
Gotcha.
I didn't include the specifics of the plan in the board policy, and knowing the way, now I'm knock on wood, between lunch and breakfast,
changing.
lunch is not like a bad word in
Yeah.
my life. It's changing, it's very fluid, so.
Okay.
And your board policy, you want it to be a very structural framework, and then the day-to-day, procedures, I think, are more what Dr. McDowell's plan is, if that makes sense. That's probably why, but this is, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have this right in front of me, but it references protocols. The policy references protocols, right? So what Dr. McDowell had done
Would be the
earlier are the protocols.
Right, but, there's just, there are appendices that it says the COVID-19 protocols in the following areas and included in the corresponding appendices, and that's why I was curious why those things that are they're all there, they're just not here, So I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
You're assuming that somebody somewhere will actually read one of these policies?
Well, Denise did.
Yeah.
2 times.
Yep, we pay her to read them.
Are we good for roll call?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Any other questions, complaints? Okay,
Okay.
roll call.
Mrs. Falpel? Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Marmion?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes. Okay, section 15, public participation. Same as last time, please rise, stand, give us your name. Try and keep your name and address. Try and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, and you can talk about anything you'd like at this point in time. Is there anyone to bring anything to the board?
My name is Lou Munius, 103 Johnson Avenue. Been a Oakland resident for 55 years. I'm a lot older than a lot of you folks on the board.
Thank you.
Anyhow, my question really involves curriculum. My kids went to school here. They went through Collingswood. So I'm familiar with what's happened in the past. I'm not familiar with what's going on now. But what I hear about what's going on around the country doesn't really gel. So my question is for the curriculum and for Dr. McDowell. Are we doing any teaching with CRT?
Wait, you want me to answer it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, sir. So critical race theory is a theory that is taught in graduate school around public policy and in law schools in order to analyze policies through the lens of race and ethnicity. It's not appropriate in a K-12 space. It's not taught in Collingswood or Oakland, and so that's our answer. We don't do CRT here.
Okay. how do you monitor it in case one of the teachers all of a sudden decides to, put their 2 cents in? Is there any monitoring of it?
Well, our school leaders are in classrooms every single day. We have weekly professional learning community sessions with teachers broken down by grade band and content area, where they're looking at the actual curriculum. Feedback is provided on a regular basis. If there is an outlier, if that was brought to our attention, then we would address that immediately. But as far as to date, knock on wood, there has been no mention, there's been no discussion, because critical race theory is not appropriate in the K-12 space.
I agree. And the reason, a lot of this is being brought to the forefront is because of this virtual learning. Everybody's on virtual. So the parents have been seeing what some of their kids were getting taught. I'm talking around the country now, not here. That's why I'm bringing this up. So you can see why in some cases, some of these board meetings have gone really way out. One other thing,
Can I just add something real fast?
Certainly.
I'm sorry. So I just wanted to point out too that on our website, under the curriculum office, there is, what do you call it, the Rubicon, or which lists the approved curriculums that we have. It's like the curriculum map, so you can look on there too.
well, like I said,
Yeah.
my kids are out of school.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not really familiar with your website, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now how about 1619 project? Do you get involved in that?
So 1619 is a set of resources. I know that there is a lot of controversy associated with it. In terms of what teachers teach at the appropriate level, teachers have access to a wide range of tools that they integrate in for discussion. In terms of what is or is not being taught as a supplemental part of the curriculum, we would have to get back to you. But it is not a core. There are standards associated with history and the social
Right.
studies curriculum, and I know that
So
teaching is.
that, you're saying that is not involved in your,
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that our educators are aligning their instruction, their strategies, and the resources that they use to the standards, and there's a whole host of materials. So in terms of whether or not the 1619 project or the 1740 project are being incorporated in daily classroom instruction at the high school level, that would be a question we would need to ask the high school to determine whether or not that is one of multiple resources being used in our history and social studies classes.
so that's not being done here in K through,
No, sir, it's not grade level appropriate for that level of
I
content.
agree. That's
It's
why,
going to be more for, generally it starts at about 7th to 8th grade in terms of reading level, but generally it's more appropriate for a high school level class, preferably 11th or 12th grade, if it's being used.
why have you decided that that is an appropriate type of instruction?
I have not decided. We leave the supplemental materials to our educators who are experts in their content area. So 1619 is just one of multiple resources that our educators may possibly leverage in their classroom instruction based on the standards that they're covering that is specific to each
But it
course.
totally goes against the founding of this country. I mean, that's a fact. So why would why would an educator teach something that is totally against the founding of this country?
Well, sir, I'm not going to debate educational policy with you. What I would encourage you to do is to review the standards that we are covering. If you leave us your contact information, we can have the head of our history department reach out to you and share with you what is actually being taught at the high school.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Okay, I got a little research to do too, because I'm not familiar with the 1619 project. That'll give me something to do tomorrow, that's great.
It compares that plus 1776, which was the founding of our country, you know? Declaration of Independence.
I remember that well.
Constitution, you know, and all of that. That we all should remember. But this was something that has been brought in just recently, within probably the last 2-3 years. I'm not sure of the date, but what I've been able to glean about it, it's totally off the wall. So, again, that's prompted my question. And I would be
Okay.
happy to talk to somebody at the high school.
Okay.
And Bill knows all my contact information. Or if you want me to write it down for you, I will do that too afterwards. Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, Lou. Anyone else? Nudge him, make sure he's awake, wait. Okay, hearing none, we'll come out of that, and we'll go to item 16, which is adjournment. Anybody want to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done. Thanks, guys.
I think you should